Hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing LeetCode problem 926. Flip string to monotone increasing. Problem 926 states a binary string is monotone increasing if it consists of some number of zeros, possibly none, followed by some number of ones, also possibly none. You are given a binary string S. You can flip the character, changing it from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 0. Return the minimum number of flips to make S monotone increasing. Example 1, the output is 1. Basically, we're going to flip this 0 to a 1, which gives us 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. Example 2, we're basically going to flip, what are we doing here? We're going to flip this to 0 and this to 1. So the output is 2 flips. Or we flip both of these to 1. Either one would work. The third example, we're just going to flip these two 1s to 0. So we'll get all zeros, as opposed to flipping these two 1s, which would be 3, which would be more than the output of 2. To do this problem, we're going to find the first occurrence of the number 1, and then we're going to count the number of 1s and then the number of zeros after that. So if you look at this first example, we find the first 1, so that's 1. The second one, that's 2. So we have 2 number 1s and 1 0. So because 0, the count of 0 is 1, the count of 1s is 2. So we're just going to flip the lowest number, which is 0. So we just flip that to 1. Hopefully this will become clear as I walk through it. So the first thing we're going to do is define an integer to get the length of S. Then if S equals null or N equals 0, then we're just going to return 0. Alright, so let's define two integers. We're going to get the count of 1s. We'll initialize that to 0, and then we'll get the count of zeros. Also initialize that to 0. Then we're going to do a char array of, turn that string into character array. Alright, now let's start looping through the array. For int I equals 0, I is going to be less than the length of S, I plus plus. So we're basically going to look at each character. So if the first character, if this character equals 0, we need to get the count of 1s first. Oops. So if count of 1s equals 0, remember we're going to loop through the characters until we find the first occurrence of the number 1. So if count of 1s equals 0, we're just going to continue. As we're trying to find the first occurrence of 1. Else, if we have found the first occurrence of 1, then we're just going to increment the zeros. We're going to start the 0 count. Alright, that's if the character is 0. Otherwise, else if it's not 0, it's got to be 1. So we're going to increase the count of 1s. The final thing we need to do is see if the count of zeros is greater than the count of 1s. If this is the case, then the count of zeros is equal to the count of 1s. And then we just return count of zeros. And that should be it. Let's run it. That is successful. We'll submit it. And beats 97.48% of users. So let's debug this real quick. Set a breakpoint here. Okay, so the value of S is 00110. So if we step into, S is not null and N is not equal to 0. So it's going to bypass that, declare those, and then create a character array of the string. So if it equals 0, it does. Is the count of 1s also equals 0? It does. So we're just going to continue. Now we move on to the second number in the array. Second character, it is also 0. The count of 1s is still 0, so we're going to continue again. Now we get to the number 1. And because it is equal to 1, we go into the else loop and increment the count of 1's value. So if count of zeros is greater than count of 1's, which it is not, so we'll continue on. And now we have another number 1. We increase the count of 1. Count of zeros is still not greater. So we have the last number, which is 0. The count of 1's equals 0. It is not. So we're going to increment the count of zeros. So now we have count of zeros, which equals 1, and count of 1's, which equals 2. So if count of zeros is greater than count of 1's, which it isn't, so we're just going to return the count of zeros, which is 1. And that's what it does. So in this case, we're going to flip this last 0 to 1. So for the time complexity, we have O of n squared. We're entering a for loop, and inside the for loop we have an if statement. So those will both increase as you increase the string value. Space complexity is just O of n. As you increase n, increases the space needed. And that's it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.